The producers thought they had struck gold. Clint Eastwood and Robert De Niro. On the same episode of The View. No script. No pre-interview. Just unfiltered conversation between two living legends. The episode was being billed as Hollywood icons. Unscripted. But what no one expected, least of all the hosts, was how fast it would stop being about movies. When Eastwood arrived that morning, he came alone. No entourage. No publicist. Just a soft nod to the security staff and a folded note in his shirt pocket. He sat in the green room quietly, sipping black coffee, ignoring the screens playing previous episodes on loop. De Niro showed up later. More animated. Shaking hands. Cracking jokes with the crew. The contrast between them wasn't new. Everyone knew they stood on different ends of everything. Style, politics, the way they held silence. But when the two men met just off stage, they shook hands. "Let's try to keep it clean," Eastwood said. De Niro smiled. "We'll see how it goes." What started as respect was already starting to feel like a dare. The segment began like any other. Joy Behar introduced them both with glowing praise. The tough guy and the thinking man, both in the same room. "Clint, Robert, welcome to The View." The audience erupted. Eastwood gave a small nod. De Niro flashed a smile and waved. The first 10 minutes were everything the network hoped for. De Niro told a story about Scorsese. Eastwood talked about directing through back pain. The women asked about aging in Hollywood, how the industry had changed, how they kept working. But then Sonny Hostin asked the question that turned everything. "Clint, you once said America was becoming too soft. Do you still believe that?" Eastwood looked over at De Niro before answering. "Yeah," he said. "I still think there's power in not making excuses." He said it plainly. No bravado. No insult. Just belief. De Niro chuckled. "Not kindly. You mean like not making excuses for who you support?" Clint's jaw shifted just slightly. The audience quieted. Sonny raised her eyebrows, trying to steer the question back toward culture. But it was too late. Clint didn't look at the hosts. He looked at De Niro. "I didn't come here to spar," he said. De Niro leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Then maybe you should have stayed home." There was a pause. A real one. Then Whoopi stepped in, trying to laugh it off. Okay, boys. We're not doing Raging Bull this morning." The audience chuckled. Clint didn't. He looked straight at De Niro. "This the part where you remind everybody how disappointed you are in me." De Niro didn't flinch. "I don't have to remind anyone. They already know." The air left the room. What had been a reunion was now something else entirely. A reckoning. And the cameras were still rolling. The studio had gone still. You could hear mugs being gently lifted. Jackets shifting. Chairs creaking. No one wanted to move too quickly and miss what might happen next. Joy Behar tried to regain control. "Robert, Clint, this isn't a political roundtable," she said, her tone forced light. "We've got a lot of young viewers who admire both of you. Let's not make this into something it doesn't need to be." De Niro ignored her. He wasn't smiling anymore. He pointed at Eastwood, voice measured but loaded. "It's not about politics. It's about responsibility. When you're in our position and you back people who lie, who divide, you don't get to call that patriotism. That's cowardice with a flag on it." Eastwood didn't raise his voice. He didn't blink. He just leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "You don't know what I've seen, Bob," he said. "You don't know the weight of staying quiet while people rewrite the world around you. You think I don't know about weight?" De Niro snapped. "I've spent my whole life using this face to say things most men are too afraid to admit. And now I watch you, a man I used to admire, treat truth like a threat." Sarah Haynes looked toward the producer behind the camera, her eyes wide. Sonny Hostin picked up her cue cards, but didn't read from them. The segment was off script now. It belonged to them. Clint stood up. He didn't storm. He rose like he was done waiting. But instead of leaving, he walked to the front of the panel, directly between the co-hosts and the audience. He turned to De Niro. "You talk about truth like it's yours alone," Eastwood said. "But truth doesn't come dressed in your comfort. It comes with silence, with restraint, with letting other people speak even when you hate what they're saying." De Niro rose too. "You're not talking about speech," he said. "You're talking about permission. You want people to stay in their place." "I won't." Clint stepped forward. "I never asked you to." There was no shouting. Only two men locked in a standoff that felt older than either of them. Then Whoopi raised her hand. "Enough," she said, with a kind of tired authority that only comes from knowing when a line's been crossed too far to walk back. But Robert De Niro didn't stop. He turned to the audience now. "You know what the real tragedy is?" he said. "That we still treat this man like a hero just because he scowls and speaks in riddles. There's no depth in cynicism. There's no wisdom in shrugging." That was it. The moment snapped. Clint didn't respond. He didn't need to. It was Whoopi who said the words that would live beyond the segment. "Bob," she said, "I'm going to ask you to step off." De Niro blinked. "What?" "You need to leave the table," she said. "We don't bring people here to be accused. We bring them here to be heard." For a second, the audience didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. So they did both. A few started applauding. Most just stared. De Niro looked stunned. Clint didn't move. He had already said what needed saying. Producers approached quietly from the wings. One placed a hand gently on De Niro's shoulder. "You're really doing this?" he asked. "No," Whoopi replied. "You did this." And without another word, Robert De Niro was escorted off the View stage. No cameras cut away. No commercial rolled. Just a man walking out of the frame of his own making. The producers didn't speak for several minutes after the show ended. There were no congratulations. No wrap party mood. Just the silence that follows something that went too far and too real. De Niro left without saying goodbye. His car was already waiting. A black SUV. Tinted windows. The driver didn't ask questions. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him, and looked out at a city that suddenly felt less familiar. Clint Eastwood stayed behind. Not to celebrate. Not to clarify. But because he had nowhere else he needed to be. He sat backstage, alone again, same coffee in hand, half full now and cold. A junior producer walked up to him cautiously, a little out of breath. "Mr. Eastwood," she said. "We didn't expect that. I just wanted to say, thank you for staying calm." Clint looked at her. He didn't nod. He didn't smile. He just said, "You don't win by yelling." And she understood more in that moment than any panel had taught her all year. The clip went viral in under 2 hours. Not the fight, not the confrontation, but the moment De Niro was asked to leave, and Eastwood simply sat still, letting silence do the talking. People debated it in every corner of the internet. Some said it was censorship. Others said it was overdue. But what most people noticed, what they kept coming back to, was the look on Eastwood's face when he was being accused. It wasn't anger. It wasn't guilt. It was something slower, something steadier, like a man who had already buried every version of himself people wanted him to be. Whoopi Goldberg addressed the fallout the next morning. She didn't apologize, but she didn't gloat. "We have a table where we let people speak," she said. "But respect is not optional." The audience clapped, but not with the energy of vindication. More like the kind of applause people give when they realize things could have gone worse. De Niro's team released a short statement. It said he stood by what he said, that he believed in passion and honesty, that he had no regrets. But he didn't come back on air. He didn't explain further. Clint Eastwood never made a statement at all. He returned to his quiet life. A small ranch. An old truck. A workshop where no one asks for autographs and no one expects performance. And that was the difference. Robert De Niro had tried to win a moment. Clint Eastwood had waited one out. And in the end, the audience didn't remember who got the final word. They remembered who didn't need one.